whether that's good or bad friction. Are you serious? I don't have to. Hi, I'm Derri, and I've read it before. I want to ask you to like and subscribe. It still feels weird asking people to do that. I know I have to. I don't have to. I know it helps the channel a lot, but it just feels such a strange thing to do because I'm just here to talk about the books that I really like. I'm not, I'm not trying to be huge. I'm not trying to broadcast myself necessarily hugely, but I do think that what I have to say about these books can be really good for new readers. So it would be good if new readers can find me, and that can only happen if people like and subscribe. So if you would do that, I'd really appreciate it. We're here today and we're talking about The Mad Ship. The Mad Ship has a little bit of content that you need to be aware of. The Mad Ship and the Ship of Destiny to follow does have instances where sexual assault and sexual abuse are referenced. The Mad Ship has referenced incidents and has a sexual assault occur off page. And the reason I want to talk briefly about that is because clearly, as anybody who has ever had anything happen to them in the past, this can be very triggering, it can be hugely upsetting, and if you're not aware it's there, it can be a hell of a shock. It is there, but it's also not gratuitous. It's not used as shock value. It's not necessarily used to drive the plot. What it does do is look at trauma and how trauma affects people. And this is true, this is true for all of the realm of the Elderlings, to be fair, but these are the books that are a little more in your face about it. So I really just want to reassure anyone who needs content or trigger warnings that some things are going to be really difficult. But Robin Hobb, I think, deals with them particularly well. It's never gratuitous, it's never titillation, it's treated with respect, in that the victims are acknowledged, they're seen, their responses are valid, they're very real. All of the responses that you see, and you get varied responses, are true to how people genuinely react to trauma, and you actually see how people are processing and working through this and how it affects the relationships they have with the people around them. So while they're not necessarily incidents that drive plot, they are relevant because it alters the way people who are impacted behave. It alters their decisions. So it is important, and it's there. So nothing on page in The Mad Ship. So with that out of the way, okay. The Mad Ship is a really good book. It suffers in no way from middle book syndrome. The Mad Ship is not just a bridging book between a really interesting beginning and an absolutely awesome end. The Mad Ship has a lot of stuff in it. The Mad Ship answers a lot of questions. It poses some more interesting questions, but you get a lot of answers. And it covers a lot of ground. A lot happens in Mad Ship. Something to keep in mind. The Mad Ship could refer to more than one ship and could use the word mad in more than one way, because we have mad as in insane, and we have mad as in really angry. And both of those factors play in to more than one ship. So there is a lot of the ships in the Mad Ship. we get a lot of character growth in the ships that are part of our story, being Vivacia and Paragon. Paragon's relationships with the family who own him, are explored. Paragon has been through some stuff. And he's a ship, and yes, I have emotions about a ship. Don't come for me. You will understand when you read the book. We get a lot of relationship dynamic because we're getting more time spent with the ships. We're getting a lot of that high pressure environment where people can't get away from each other and they have to deal with the friction between them. Whether that's good or bad friction, it has to be addressed. So we get sort of cranked up, high octane relationship dynamics. And interestingly, the ships form a big part of that because they are characters in their own right. We see a lot of changes in Vivacia. We see a lot of changes in Paragon. And we see, as a result of those changes, a lot of the potential outcomes for the human characters changing because the changes to the ships alter what's possible in those people's lives. And as I said, we get some interesting answers. Some of the answers are to questions that haven't been posed yet. And later on, you'll go, oh, I remember that. Keep that in mind. And some of them are answers that you'll go, are you serious? You learn a lot. You learn a lot about dragons. You learn a lot about the interconnectedness of the plot to dragons. And we revisit the Other's Island, where Kenneth went at the beginning of the Ship of Magic. Wintro has quite a profound experience in this book, and it alters him in a way you're not expecting. I can't be more clear on that because that's a very powerful chapter to read through. The dynamic between Kenneth and Wintro, Etta and Vivacia, and all four of those people together is fascinating. The pulls of power and attraction and wanting in these four characters is incredibly absorbing. It's written exceptionally well. And while you've got that happening on the Vivacia, the Paragon has pulled some more people toward him, and his storyline becomes much richer and much more developed. And again, forced proximity puts a lot of pressure on those relationships. The beadmaker Amber from the Ship of Magic becomes a more central character in the Mad Ship, and she forms a unique relationship with Paragon, which brings elements of Paragon's character to the forefront, which we haven't seen before. We also have a young boy who had previously been a slave drawn to work on the Paragon, and his relationship with Paragon brings more of Paragon to the surface. And what we get with all of this is a deeper understanding of the undercurrents that are happening in the region. We're starting to see the effects that slavery is having on culture around them. We're seeing the effects that the war 10 years ago, 7 years ago, roughly then ago, has had on trade. We're seeing the effects that that's had on the quality of goods that have been coming and going from all sorts of areas. The political situation in Jamalia has come to a head to some degree, and with that we get a new element in the Mad Ship. The satrap has decided to take all of these complaints that he's been getting from Bingtown and come and deal with them himself. That sounds like a great thing. Until you meet him. He comes very close to being as hateable as Kyle in this book. Cosgrove is an awful person, and the way he treats the people around him is horrific, and how the story ends in Madship is going to satisfy to some degree with where it leaves Cosgrove. Cosgrove is a victim to some degree of political machinations in Jamalia. And that aside, he possibly may not have been as awful as he is, but he is, and now he's in Bingtown. And there are lots of quite clever people in Bingtown who see his arrival as a useful moment to them. So things get very political in Bingtown, and we're talking populations are not happy and the ruler has shown up. This is a lot of tinder somewhere where there's very likely to be sparks. So you get a lot in Liveships. There's a lot happening. Some of it will make sense, some of it will leave you confused, and it's kind of okay, because when you get this many threads, this much convergence of power all in the same place, things are going to get tangled and they're going to get complicated, and it does. We get lots of explanations around the rain wilds in the Madship. So some of those mysteries from the first book are going to come to light, and you will get a much clearer picture of what's going on. The Madship is where you will begin to see some of the interconnected threads to Farseer. Around the magics, around what you learn about dragons, and around the prehistory of the Rain Wilds. It's a very satisfying book, but also one that makes you absolutely desperate to now pick up the Ship of Destiny, because now you have to know how this ends. But you do get a lot of answers, and character growth is huge, and the situation is so fluid. It is so open to movement at the end, at where we end, that you are literally supposed to get to the end of Madship and go, holy crap, what's going to happen from here? Because so many things are possible. The setup is magnificent. There isn't a dull moment in Madship. It just kind of rollicks along, and yeah, remember to take a breath. Remember to let out the breath you didn't know you were holding. and basically just sort of strap yourself in for a hell of a ride. A lot goes on in Madship. There's still a lot of really excellent theme work being done. There's still a lot of excellent sort of deep lore being laid down. But there's so much happening. With that, happy reading, and I'm going to love you and leave you. I'll catch you next time.